When someone dies in prison, the wing is locked down. The police will be called. The prisoner's cell can turn into an evidence scene. Officers involved might have to write statements immediately. And sometimes, even years later, the entire case ends up in a public courtroom where everything that happened inside that prison is examined. So, what actually happens when someone dies in custody? The second a prisoner is confirmed dead, the prison has to trigger a very strict reporting process. Under the death in custody framework, the prison must notify several organizations straight away: the police, the coroner, and the PPO, so Prisons and Probation Ombudsman. Senior prison management are informed as well, obviously, and the prisoner's family must be told as soon as it is reasonably possible. Usually, a family liaison officer is assigned to the family to keep in contact with them during the investigation. From that point, the death is no longer just a prison issue, it becomes a formal investigation. But the most intense part of the response actually happens within the 24 hours. The first 24 hours after death is pronounced is all about preserving evidence and recording what happened. So, staff involved will normally have to write a full initial statement while everything is still fresh in their minds. CCTV footage gets secured, records are preserved, things like welfare checks, incident logs, and medical records. Senior managers review the incident. Police may attend if the death is unexpected or violent. And the Prison and Probation Ombudsman is notified so they can start preparing their investigation. But if a death happened inside a cell, there's another process that has to happen first. Because investigators need to know exactly what was inside that room. So, to make it simple, if someone dies in the cell, the area is secured straight away, bolted and locked. Movement on the wing might be restricted, because what's inside that room might later become evidence. This is where something called a cell clearance begins. Normally, two officers carry it out together. Both officers should be wearing body-worn cameras to see the entire process is recorded. They enter the cell with property documentation sheets, evidence bags, and numbered seals. Then they begin documenting the cell, and that means everything: clothes, letters, books, food, medication, toiletries, paper. Every single item is placed in bags. Then the bag is sealed with a numbered seal. Then the seal number is recorded on the property sheet. There is one sheet in the bag, one sheet for the records. It's a prolonged, very tedious process. Then the officers write down exactly what's inside that bag, and the same information is copied onto another sheet so investigators and prison records match. Nothing can be skipped. Nothing gets thrown away. Every item is accounted for, because later investigators might ask one simple question: what was inside that cell, miss? And the prison has to be able to prove it. That's why cell clearance can take hours. And I mean it, hours. But not every prisoner dies inside the prison itself. Sometimes they are taken to hospital first. That might be because of illness, overdose, or injury. But legally, that person is still considered to have died in custody because they were in custody of the state. So the investigation process is exactly the same. Police might still investigate, PPO still investigates, and the case still goes to the coroner. The only difference is investigator might look more closely at medical treatment rather than the area itself. What decisions were made, how quickly help was provided, and what happens once the prisoner reached hospital. People also often ask me whether things are different to open prisons. Because Cat D prisons have fewer restrictions and prisoners move around much more freely. They go out for the day, they come back for the night. But legally, a death there is still a death in custody. So the investigation process doesn't change. Police can investigate, PPO investigates, and eventually the case can still end up in coroner's court. Investigators might look at supervision levels or whether the person should have been in open prison in the first place. But the accountability process is exactly the same. Now, once a death is reported, investigation begins. Sometimes the police investigates, especially if the death is unexpected and violent, as I previously mentioned. Then the PPO carries out an independent investigation, and they look at everything: staff statements, CCTV, welfare check records, healthcare response, prison policies. Their job is to clearly understand exactly what happened and whether procedures were followed. And this investigation alone can take many months, unfortunately, sometimes longer. Then, eventually, the case goes to coroner's court. This is where something called an inquest happens. An inquest is basically a public hearing that examines the death. It's not about deciding criminal guilt, though. Instead, it answers four key questions: who the person was, when they died, where they died, and how the death happened. Witnesses can be called. They might include prison officers, healthcare staff, investigators, and sometimes other prisoners. Families can attend as well. They can have legal representation. And in deaths in custody, the inquest is often heard with a jury. And now, this is the very important bit, because if the coroner believes serious risks still exist and failures were identified, they can issue something called a Prevention of Future Deaths report. Those reports can force organisations like the Prison Service or NHS to change procedures. Right, so who actually gets the blame? Because sometimes investigation finds that no rules were broken. Other times they uncover serious failures, missed welfare checks, problems with suicide monitoring, medical response delays. And if those failures are serious enough, consequences can include disciplinary action, professional investigation, or changes across the prison system. In rare cases, that can be a criminal charge. So when someone dies in prison, it doesn't just disappear behind the walls. They don't get buried in the backyard. The cell is documented, investigations begin, evidence is gathered, and eventually the death might be examined in open court. But the real question people still argue about is this: when someone dies in custody, was it the system that failed? Or did someone make a mistake? Let me know what you think in the comments. And if you want the real explanation how the system actually works, subscribe to my channel. New episodes I release on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday, and I do it religiously, whether I'm ill, like currently, or not. And I'll be live with Fran this Sunday at 7 p.m. answering your questions on Fran's channel. Before I wrap this up, hi, my name is Dagna, and I was a prison officer in the UK for 6 years. I've stood inside of the system. I've seen what the headlines miss. This is Inside Out Justice, when we say the quiet parts out loud.